Welcome, Tiny Hands, Big Dreams, here at the edge of the Amazon. We just covered our food journey, which was like the last 10 years of our life, of all of these crazy little incidents that happened that steered us into learning a skill of something, I think, to make incredible, delicious food for health, for things, all from scratch. We also learned along the way things we don't eat, specifically and for reasons and for evidence. And that is just as important as all the great things we do eat. Mm-hmm. So we decided we're going to share that. Now, first we'll just list them off. Then we're going to get into each one specifically as to why. We decided to take a lovely, we just had a big squall roll through. So we're going to take a rainy day and we're going to do a video.
That's why it's always raining in every single video.
If it's sunny and great.
We're working.
Yeah.
So when it rains, we're like, video time. It really doesn't rain all the time here, I swear.
All right, the things we don't eat, the list.
And this is just particular to us, our family. The four main are gluten, cow dairy, specifically seed oils, and soy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nada. Now, when we get into those, there's some uninteresting reasons. The cow dairy for her and Eli is allergens to the protein and the sugars. That's it. It's genetic. It is what it is.
Well, it's sort of. Well, do we want to go through each one?
Yeah.
Start with gluten.
Gluten.
That's your thing, not my thing. I can have gluten.
I tried very hard to refuse that I was gluten sensitive. It erupted somewhere in my 30s. I suspect it had something to do with glyphosate in the food supply, which it turns out is a chronic issue in the United States.
We've heard from a lot of other people the same thing.
There's a lot of studies, a lot of things linking dysfunction in your gut to the pesticides. I had a cast iron stomach growing up. Like literally, my family called me like the kid with the cast iron stomach. I could eat anything, and I was fine. So that's what it was before, and then yeah. And it got worse and worse and worse as time went on, to the point of if there was even a hint of flour in a kitchen, somehow the cross-contamination, or the tiny little bit that ends up in spices that you don't think, you're like, oh, you put a little packet of taco seasoning. There's a tiny little bit of wheat in there, and then boom.
So how did you get to that point, though?
How did I get
to realizing that you should never eat gluten?
So, pain. Lots and lots of pain.
There's no greater teacher than
couldn't get up in the mornings. Yeah, pain will make you do stuff. I couldn't get up in the mornings. It hurt. Every part of my body hurt and was inflamed. And finally, it had gotten to the point where it was 2 hours to get out of bed. And I would roll and stretch and this, just almost in tears, and finally be able to get up and go to the bathroom and stretch some more. And after another hour, maybe I was able to walk around, and then I get going, and kind of okay. And I finally just I just can't go on like this. So I go to the doctor, and they prescribe me anti-inflammatories. And wow, magically better. Amazing.
Which I guess is important for all of these things, because as I'm thinking about this, pretty much all of this has to do with inflammation.
Right.
All of it.
This, however, is only a clue to what is wrong. Do not think it is a cure. Here's the rub. Yes.
Inflammation is caused by something.
Inflammation is gone. I feel great. I'm bouncing around. I can hear my heartbeat in my ears. Not good. And my stomach... Stephen King could write a wonderful novel about the horrors of my stomach. Yeah. It's bad. It's real bad. So I couldn't continue to take the medication. I would take it sometimes and feel better, and then stop taking it and revert back. I finally ended up my chiropractor. Wonderful, wonderful, amazing guy, and called me I think he called me a ninny. It's like, why are you eating the thing that causes you to be inflamed and then taking a pill to cancel out the inflammation? And I just kind of went, why did you just make that sound so simple? I've been struggling this for years. And he's like, wow, you're the one that's not smart. And I'm like, oh, we were friends. Like he could do that to me. And he goes, look, like without getting into like what's specifically wrong with you, you're gonna have to do an elimination diet and figure out what works. He goes, but wheat, dairy, corn, in that order, by the numbers. That is simply the biggest 3 allergens. Figure out which one you are. Stop all 3 if you want to just see if that works. I'm like, oh, okay. So I just started with wheat off the bat. I'm like, oh, why not?
You picked like the hardest thing.
I know.
Way to go on that. But I mean, it was the right thing. But it's definitely, I think, the hardest thing to cut out.
I had a 1 in 3 chance. Now, interestingly so, and then I would go back and forth, and I would not eat it for a couple weeks, and I'd feel better, and then I'm like, oh, I'm just going to try this, or I'm just going to make some pancakes, or have a sandwich. 2 days later, wasn't the next day. So my digestion is just a little slower, and by the time it hit my lower gut and caused inflammation, it was 2 full days. Bang, lower back pain, horrible stiffness. Takes a week or 2 to recover again. Trust me, I fought it. I didn't want it.
Didn't want it to be true?
I didn't want to be all trendy and gluten-free. No, like pain. The corn was interesting. I would sometimes react to corn, and I finally figured out that if I ate organic corn, I was okay. If I ate GMO corn, I wasn't, except a third of the time when I ate the organic corn, it still did it. Come to find out that about a third of all organic corn is simply mislabeled, mixed up. They've cheaped out. They've put the GMO stuff in there. I am simply a wonderful instrument to tell you that they've done that. So I've mostly eliminated corn. We've started eating corn again here.
No, that's an interesting, can I side note?
Yeah.
So an interesting thing, it's not on our major 4 list because it's not a full cutout. Corn. When Eli was very little, and he would have corn like at daycare, terrible stomach problems, and we ended up completely cutting out corn from our diet, like 100%, just across the board, and he was totally fine. And then when we moved here to Ecuador, where everything is different, and there was basically a heirloom landrace different corn that was clearly not a GMO product. We started eating that. We eat that now with 0 ill effects for anyone.
It's
so that's just kind of an interesting.
It's a white corn. It's starchy. It's got big kernels. The cobs don't grow perfectly even and like machined, like that. They're gnarly, missing on the end, and like just. Yeah.
But it's super tasty. It makes the best cornbread ever.
Oh man, stuff is amazing.
So it's an interesting side note. That it's not always for some things it's an across the board we don't eat it, and for some things it's like, well, we don't eat it when it is this particular form or this particular kind or processed in this way. So it's a bit of a nuanced conversation for some things, but to go back to the absolute no gluten.
Yeah,
like
gluten's
no.
It's a hard no.
And that is a tricky thing, because for me, when we met, I'm like, I don't know, I eat bread, I eat gluten, what do I do? And we made the decision that when we sort of joined our lives together, there was not going to be your food and my food and the things that we needed to be able to eat everything in our kitchens, and eventually singular kitchen. So there are some people who are like, oh, well, I can eat dairy, but someone in my family can't. No, just across the board, we need to be able to eat everything in a kitchen.
Family that eats together stays together.
It's also a safety thing. For you with the gluten, it's such a sensitive, you're so sensitive, that any cross-contamination will cause you a problem. So I just made the decision early on, okay, I guess I go gluten-free now. And we continued to find things that had hidden gluten in them, like the hemp milk we used to use ended up not being
it was certified gluten-free for a while, and then all of a sudden, and I had some issues because we used to hemp milk in our coffee, and it's lovely, and all of a sudden, like,
because the dairy free.
And then I had like the lower back pain and something, and all of a sudden I'm like, where's the label? The label's changed. When did the label change? Like, it's the same label, it's just missing the little stamp. I called the company, and they're like, well, here's the thing. It is mostly, but we can't certify it because We buy
Manufacturing.
no.
It wasn't. It was the
growing.
That's right.
Because they grow the hemp in giant fields after a wheat crop. They do like a fall hemp crop. There could be some wheat that grew in the giant fields, and they just combine it all. There could be cross contamination.
So that was a full. Okay, never mind. Cut that out. Okay, cut this out. Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't economically feasible to get a certified crop.
Which I think it was a big part of leading us towards less packaged processed things. Because I know that the potatoes we buy don't have wheat. We're good. I know that. Well, it's very frustrating and difficult as the person going shopping to be like, well, is this thing? And then occasionally you'd have some reaction. I'm like, I don't know where it came from.
It also meant that all meals almost entirely are made at home.
Yep.
Which was its own minefield and difficult to learn. And once now that we've learned it, like there's...
But, I mean, we would try to go, we'd be going somewhere, we would take a trip, do something, and we'd try to eat out, and it was super risky. It almost always didn't go well. And so eventually it was just, never mind. We're not going to try to eat out anymore.
Besides the cross-contamination, besides this, we tried trying to explain to someone, like, no, like, it really causes me, like horrible pain.
Yeah.
French fries. And you're like, oh, I'll just get some French fries.
Seems like it should be safe.
Can you go look at the bag, please? What? They're French fries. Like, can you go look at the bag? Yeah, this says they're French fries. Can you get me the bag? They're pissed at this point. They go back in the bag, and then there's like the ingredients on like the commercial French fry. Blah 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 blah. Oh, the coating on the French. Do you know French fries have coatings? Turns out they do. They're coated in a little bit of wheat flour to aid in crispness.
Or like we used to go for sushi, and that was like an awesome treat. And eventually we just stopped doing that because there's just sneaky wheat in everything.
Yeah.
So
it was also expensive.
I mean, I said a treat. I miss those days. So okay, so that's gluten.
Right. So California roll. California roll has fake crab meat. Real crab meat's expensive. If you get real crab meat, you're okay. The fake imitation crab meat, which is ubiquitous, to use a big word, in the California rolls, because that's just and
more and more sushi, I think, is using it because it's cheap.
Yeah, because it is cheap and it's producible and it's reproducible.
Yeah.
Is made with a derivative of gluten.
Yep.
Yep.
So we do not gluten.
Yep.
I could probably gluten. I don't know. It's been 10 years?
Yeah.
9.5 something?
Yeah.
So I don't know. But we just don't. Okay. So dairy. Dairy was my dairy was what I brought to the table. Oh boy, sorry. I grew up drinking milk at every meal, cheese, love cheese. Gosh, I love cheese. I ate a lot of dairy growing up. Never had a problem. You hear some stories of like, oh, I look back at my childhood and I was always sick. No, I had no issues with dairy. Cheap dairy, expensive dairy, it doesn't matter. I got pregnant 11 and a half years ago or something now. And I ended up having absolutely horrible eczema on my entire body. Now, I've had eczema on and off my entire life. But it was always manageable. It wasn't a big deal. Okay, whatever. It was horrible. I was in a lot of pain. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I didn't know what was wrong. And I hit the same kind of point of, I can't continue. Something's got to give. So, did some research. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just try not eating dairy. Because it's the easiest thing to do. I can't take a bunch of medications. I'm not going to take steroids. I'm not going to mess up the kid. So, I can stop eating dairy. Now, that's easy when you're a normal person. When you are a pregnant person who has survived on cheese and yogurt, that was tough. So it wasn't a fun thing. But within weeks, it was gone. Just gone. I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's short-lived. You know, I've heard all these things. Pregnancy will mess up certain things and hormones, and it just messes with you. Maybe it'll be fine after. I'll get through it. Turns out, not fine. Turns out, my entire body changed. The dairy was a no-go. Completely just, I couldn't. It eventually got a little bit better. I started adding some back in. realistically, it was probably causing me problems, but it wasn't horrible enough to like, now I'm gonna do without. It got worse and worse and worse, and then when you have a small human that is also unwell, you realize, well, fine, I guess I'll stop. So I stopped. We just kind of cold turkeyed on all the dairy. I wasn't very good about it because I guess it wasn't as acute of a problem as like the gluten was for you, where it was like crippling pain.
Right.
It wasn't crippling pain. It was the skin flares up, my stomach is off, I kind of feel gross, but it wasn't enough to honestly stop completely. At that point, I could sort of manage it. It was kind of okay. Oh, it was kind of okay. I would go back and forth between having it, not having it. And what finally was kind of the end of all the cow dairy. I was working in a gluten-free bakery. And when you work in a bakery and you are doing recipe development, you need to taste the food. And it was not a dairy-free bakery. So I'd be like, oh, I have to taste it. I'll taste a little bit here and there, and it'll be okay. It was not okay. It was not okay anymore. And at some point I realized, like, I really don't feel good, even having a little bit. So, full stop.
Yeah.
It was a full stop.
I see people, or not here, but in the States, they're walking around, and I look at them, and I can see that their skin is rough and almost like crusty and things. Like I watch how they move. Like I can tell their joints hurt. I can see that the stomach's distended, and I'm like, I know all those symptoms.
And a lot of it comes back to the same inflammation. Now the dairy for me was, like you said, it was the twofold, because some people there's the proteins and the sugars,
right,
and they are allergic or sensitive to one or the other. For me, it's both, which is really unfortunate. Eventually, along the way, somehow, I couldn't tell you when, I figured out that goat milk was okay. And I think it was the cheese, because we used to buy all of our cheese at Trader Joe's, and they had goat cheese of multiple varieties. And I realized that was okay. I could handle that just fine. So we started having goat milk, but it is expensive. It is not always super accessible. But that's why we don't have or will ever have a dairy cow, because we can't consume it, and that's why
unless it's as steak and burgers.
That would not be a dairy cow then. That would be a meat cow. So that's why we have the goats. Eventually we'll have sheep, because that is also super digestible for us. We have no issues with goat milk at all.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of interesting. It is the most, what's the word I want? I want to say breakdownable, but that's not a word.
It's
digestible.
Digestable's good.
Digestible.
Non-allergenic. No, it seems to work out great.
Yeah.
So, all right. Now we've covered wheat. We've covered dairy. Corn.
Yeah, that's a bit of a side note.
We've covered corn.
So seed oil.
Seed oil.
We have gone down a path with oil.
Yep. And we've been challenged on it too.
Well, I grew up with.
Everybody grew up with the bottle of Wesson oil on the counter, or Crisco. Or both.
Both. That was both.
Yeah.
Yep.
For different applications.
Mm-hmm. Never thought about it. No, never.
The idea of eating the fat around like a steak or a pork chop or something was gross to me. Every bit of it would be cut off. At some point in our journey, that all changed.
Well, we had both, I think, separately cut out like canola oil, vegetable oil. I hadn't had that in a long, long, long time.
Yeah, we switched to coconut, avocado,
olive oil.
Yeah, and those are pretty good for most things.
If they are pure, and that
pure.
gets into a very
the coconut oil. Your processed versus your unprocessed. But I don't think there's a lot of impersonations out there. There's some blends.
And my theory with that is you can't impersonate coconut oil as well. You can't, because it is hard. It is a solid at cool room temperature. So I think it is harder to dilute or cut with anything else.
Now your olive oils.
We've gone through a lot.
We,
Trying to find it
I think
here.
most of the world doesn't get actual olive oil.
We watched a really interesting video on that. That goes through just how much is impersonated, what kind of the process of it, which I thought was rather enlightening. I didn't realize just how bad that particular industry.
Well, and somebody even looked at what is it? There's like some little town that's named on like a ton of olive oil bottles, and it says from the town of like something, and the person like just straight up like, this is a tiny town. They only produce, X amount of olive oil a year.
They're not producing the world's olive oil.
10,000 times that is sold under, it came from them. And there's this whole like chain where it's moved and it's things and it's relabeled and it's blended and it's things. And other places, like here, it's...
I don't know if we've ever gotten true olive oil here.
If it is, it's
rough.
The lowest grade and or blended at the same time.
Same with the avocado oil. We used to use avocado oil a lot.
It's good frying oil.
I like it. I don't have an issue with it as long as, again, it's pure.
Yeah.
That gets tough to find or to
expensive.
Authenticate.
Yeah. Coconut oil here is very expensive.
Oddly enough. Now, because of all those things, we have really cut out all oil. Sort of non-intentionally. Some of it is just accessibility, but accessibility also sort of leads you down the road of, do I feel good having it? And that's a lot of this. Do I feel good eating this thing? You can do all the research, and I get into this with people of, well, but the research says. I don't care what the research says. If I don't feel good eating something, I'm not going to eat it, because for whatever reason, whether it is just my body or what I have access to or whatever, if I don't feel good, I'm not going to eat it.
Sure. And then there's also the research disagrees.
And that's part of the problem.
And then so you start tracing back the research of like, well, where did these health recommendations come from? And we'll say straight up front, we eat a ton of salt. We eat a ton of lard. It's delicious. It's wonderful. She purifies it. It is pearl white. It's really good. And it's pretty much our primary oil, and has been for 8 years? 7 years?
No, it hasn't been that long. It's really only been since we've moved here that it's been like the majority of our fat.
We
used to buy tons of other.
That's true. We supplemented with others, but we were eating a bunch of it. All the way back at least into Washington. So some years. And it's really good. So you get into the bad research of, the seed oils are healthy and the other oils like lard is bad for you. Turns out that's not actually what those studies said. And there's one, there was the main study that was used, the government used for the recommendations things. There was this whole political thing going back in like the 50s or 60s. Some college professor found the widow of the guy who wrote the study. They found the study in his basement molding in boxes. They took them all, they went through all the papers, they looked at it, and they're like, it literally said the opposite. He just changed the end result to sell it to Congress for special interest. Everyone was lied to. There's no nice way to say that. Like we've been told, I remember my whole life, you shouldn't eat this, you should eat the seed oils, you should not have salt, you should blah, 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 blah.
The low fat, low salt.
It's a lie. It's literally a lie. So then you get into, like I've had blood tests done years apart after this switch, because my little brother challenged me on it. He's like, you're going to die. You're eating lard. And I'm like, one, it's delicious. Two, I don't think it's bad for me.
Well, and it was very obvious that it wasn't, because you were honestly looking and feeling better.
So I'm 50 this year. But when I had my blood work done after 2 years, I had lost years. Then when they said we can tell your age by like, your numbers and your blood work, I had gotten younger after 2 years.
I have reversed your age.
Yeah, no, it's pretty huge.
Yeah.
So
we cut out all of the seed oils.
Yeah, there's a lot of studies that will talk about they're poison. They're just straight up poison. They were meant to be industrial oils for lubrication purposes. Yeah. They should stay that way.
But we've also ended up cutting out all of the other oils. Now, I would prefer to have coconut oil in my life. I like it because we are dairy free. And
The avocado and the coconut.
But getting goat milk to be butter is not really going to happen. So for baking purposes, I really like having the coconut oil.
You want to make a salad dressing? You get your avocado,
It's nice.
baking, you have your coconut.
Yeah. It would be nice to have those things. So we're not against those things, but I think where the issue is, how much are you consuming? Because I still don't think that they're good for you. They may be neutral in their health. They may not be bad, but I don't know how good they really are.
So let me play off that for a second. So lard specifically, lard is not lard. It's different.
Mm-hmm.
It's different based on the pig, where it came from and what it ate. And when I say different, your 3-6 omega ratios can be massively different. They can be close to each other, which means they're wickedly out of balance. You want them, I forget the...
I can't remember the ratio. Right
there's like the ideal ratio. It's what they find in salmon and things. If you get a pasture-raised pig where they've eaten a ton of green stuff like ours do, and not just fed commodity grain byproducts and other things, their omega-3-6 ratios do that. In fact, lard can be literally the most healthy, perfect, like fat, nutritious superfood with all the great ratios, and delicious. So we do exactly that. It's sort of a one-win, but nobody really talks about, like, it can be healthy and delicious, but the way pork is done in the United States, it's not the case. It's
not in a commodity.
And even if you go to a farm,
setting.
Even if they raise the pig outdoors, is it just in a fenced, like, mud pen? It's a little better. Like, it gets access to mud, sunshine. Does it eat better food? Some.
It's steps.
Yeah, but ours eat whatever weeds things grow. The kid goes and chops them down, throws them in there, and the pigs chew them all down. We sold a piglet yesterday. Here's a slightly off story, but we sold a piglet because we had a few too many and we needed the money. So we put the piglet in the back of the van and we sort of let him loose. I made like a little pen.
It doesn't ever go smoothly. So if you ever move a piglet and you're like, does everybody have this? Yes, it's this hard.
I got muddy.
Oh, it was so much mud.
The poor pig bouncing down the road in the back of the van, never having been in a vehicle in its whole life.
Never having been outside of, like, mud.
Right. Got sort of scared and pooped all in the back of the van. We're like, oh, there's just big clumps of poop. Now, it wasn't mushy poop. It was like clumps, like with, like, I don't know. It's like the little ridges and things of like a well-formed poop. Oh God, it's gonna stink. It didn't actually stink that bad. And we're like, okay. And then we get the pig. We deliver the pig to a neighbor. They take care of him. I come back and I'm like, I'm just too tired to deal. I'm just gonna close the van and deal with it in the morning. So this morning I go and open the van. Like,
this morning you made a face about it.
Poo has been stewing in the van, just laying out there all night. Pig poo, right?
Okay.
Now we've bought pigs from people and things. They poo like you try to get it with a 10-foot pole. The van doesn't stink. So I get some leaves and I just pick it up and I chuck it over the hill. I'm like, it doesn't smell. It has a green tinge to it because they eat a lot of green stuff. A lot of vegetative. There's just almost no smell to it. Like they're healthy to the point of their insides don't even smell that horrible dying.
Okay, he's gone off now.
All right, come back.
Well, that does tie into the health of the animal, which then is directly related to the health of you.
Almost your entire health starts in the gut. Your brain health, your energy, your skin, your joints. We talked about bone broth in our food journey. How like it restored like my joints to the point of like, oh my God, I feel like I was 20 again after we started on bone broth. It's amazing.
No.
Your gut.
And a lot of it has to do with the inflammation. Like, we all know about inflammation. It's like a huge thing. The oils are directly related to inflammation.
Yeah.
I don't want inflammation in my body. That's it.
Inflammation, and then later on, vein and heart problems.
Yeah. So the other thing that we figured out back in Tennessee was soy. Now, we neither one think soy is a good thing. There's so much research about how bad it is. It is hormonally disruptive. It is bad.
Yeah, starting with straight up soybeans in their natural state, edamame, which are lovely, tasty. I enjoy them. And then you get into the fermented products. Then you get into the
Well, there's tofu. There's
right,
tempeh. There's all of the
and it kind of at the most processed end is soy sauce, which is actually, if you go and you watch a how it's done on soy sauce, it is fermented, which includes mold, lots and lots of mold. What's the mycotoxin loading of that?
Yep.
Ah, and
So-
we begin to see the inflammation problem of mycotoxins.
But no, we didn't. I don't think I figured it out that way. I don't know if you did. We are big on.
Well, there's also gluten in regular soy sauce. You have to get the gluten free.
Well, yeah, and we've been buying gluten free for a long, long time.
Sure.
And I love soy sauce. I cannot express the love I have for soy sauce. I grew up with it. It's just like there are those flavors that are just part of your childhood food experience.
There's always a bottle behind the stove. Like
it's just,
yeah.
I just love soy sauce. So I mean, I would use it quite a lot. We make a lot of Asian dishes with it. Add it to a lot for the umami, which I guess I'm a big fan of, the salty.
Yeah.
I've always loved salt. So I got yelled at for using too much of it as a kid. So I'm like, I can't give up soy sauce. Like it's fine. We'll just continue. And we're big fans of food journals, or simply remembering what you ate. Either way. And we started having sort of separately, and then we finally talked to each other about it. For him, about 2 days after, we would eat, like, I used to make pad thai with soy sauce. So good. So good. And for me, it's about not even 24 hours later. Our
right.
bodies just work a little different. So I, unfortunately, will always know how he's going to feel in like a day.
Like,
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, you're going to feel like this. I'm like, what? Oh.
So I would start feeling just not good, stiff, low back pain, just achy.
Sure.
Just not good. Not anything I could really pinpoint. Just I don't feel good. And he would feel like that about 24 hours later. And we finally both tied it to the soy sauce.
Yep.
I think it was the harder thing for me to give up than even dairy.
Yep.
But as soon as we cut that out, no more of those problems.
So if you tell someone like, yeah, we've cut out dairy, we've cut out, like soy sauce, we've cut out wheat.
Yeah.
People just like, oh God, what do you eat?
I remember that very clearly.
And at first it was like, you just sort of cut the things away, and what you're left with is
food.
Not much.
No.
But then there was the learning of like the adding things in and growing the repertoire of recipes until like we have this large and varied and wonderful.
And I remember I was working at a restaurant. I was the host at a restaurant, and I would always bring my own food because I was grateful for the job, but there was no way I was eating food there. I think if you worked at a restaurant, you probably don't want to eat there because you just know enough. So I would bring my lunch, and everybody, people would steal my food. I got really mad about that.
Well, first they made fun of you for your food.
They made fun of me, and then they decided it was really good, and they would try to steal it, which I was really upset about. It's just not okay.
Lucky they didn't get stabbed.
I remember one of them asking me, like, about like what I made or something, and I explained the things that we don't eat. And she said, "Well, what do you eat then? The food that you've been stealing?" So I think we're doing okay. We eat food.
Good food, tasty
really
food,
good
healthy food.
Now I figured out lots of gluten-free baked goods that we are very, very happy with. It has taken me about a decade now, and it has gotten more complicated moving to a different country. But
it has. But she's continued to evolve it to where
we don't feel like we're missing out.
She can make certain things better gluten-free than you can buy gluten-free anywhere. Or sometimes equivalent or even better than what you can get is regular.
Yeah, one of the best compliments I ever got was actually from my mom. Thanks, Mom. She said, I don't remember what it was. It was some baked thing I had made, and she said, "This isn't like good for gluten free. It's just good." I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's what I want to hear, because if you are gluten free or you have ever eaten anything that is gluten free, it
should come with an apology on the package.
It's like, I'm sorry, this is the best we could do. It's usually not very good. It's just what it is. I don't know why it has to be that way. That's how it is, though. So that was kind of my goal, is to make sure that we weren't feeling like we lacked anything.
Yeah. No. So there's a ton of recipes that she's developed that have like, oh, we want brownies or a chocolate cake or
bread
or English muffins or flatbreads or
tortillas.
So many things that you think are impossible to create, and she's actually managed to do it.
And then we'll head more into being able to have more dairy as we have more goats and milk, and I don't really see us feeling like we lack anything. Sure, there's some convenience. I would like to be able to just have oil. It would make life nicer.
Have cheese.
It's all a convenience thing.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to feeling good, there's so many people out there that I see who complain about how they don't feel good. They're tired. They hurt. They have inflammation. There's this. There's
but
that.
It's just too much effort to fix it.
Or they just don't understand. And they're still on that side of just not understanding where that problem is coming from.
It's a big chunk of knowledge and things to like figure out. And there's certain things that have intercepted us along the way that have given us a clue that had we not gotten that little bit of a clue to follow a different path, maybe we wouldn't have gotten this far.
Yeah.
Like my doctor finally telling me that. That
you were a ninny? I like that word. We should bring that word back.
Okay.
It's not used enough.
It's not. But changed my life. Literally just changed my life with an offhand comment. So
I guess I suggest keeping a food journal.
Yeah.
Even if you think that you don't have inflammation or you think that you feel good, because I think a lot of people are used to just a certain level of discomfort.
There's apparently, and I'm reading that there's a growing percentage of the population that just has permanent upset stomach and bad poop. And it's become like a majority of the population. If you just think that's the way things are supposed to be, like, oh, how have we gotten here? Yeah.
The food journals.
Food journals.
I forgot to add this earlier when we were talking about the mycotoxins. Peanuts were a random thing that we mostly don't eat now. I really miss it. I like it. But you have two routes to take with peanuts. And both of them are bad. We go for organic. Or generally speaking, we would prefer not to have pesticides. Okay? Organic peanuts have mold, or the potential of.
Yep.
Well, that's a problem.
They are very prone to myco problems.
So you choose mycotoxins or pesticides.
Yeah. Which they put on to counter the known problem with.
Which I guess is then a fungicide, but it's all classed as a pesticide now.
But then the fungicide also
has issues. But I noticed this. We used to have car peanuts. Remember car peanuts? A giant tub of peanuts because snacks.
Like the big, because children it's like a 7-pound can or something I would get from like Costco.
Yeah.
And there was always kids hungry, like, car peanuts.
Just the car peanut snack.
Handful of protein, fat, crunchy, salty.
I think I am probably a little bit more sensitive to the molds in general. I would have a handful of God, my stomach hurts. Like I don't feel well. And I'm like, it's just peanuts. Peanuts should be fine. Which then led us to that particular bit of research.
And it wasn't every can.
Nope. And then we did the same with peanut butter. Like, oh, this one makes my stomach hurt. This one's fine. But it's potentially full of pesticide.
Yeah, and if you got one out of one batch and it was good, and you could make it back to the store and buy the rest out of that batch,
it was probably okay.
Probably okay.
So that is I got no answer on that.
It's really hard to figure out problems that are intermittent.
Yeah, but that was something I had no idea about. And again, that wouldn't have. They have to put 2 and 2 together to figure out what is causing discomfort. And sometimes, if you're just busy and living life, you will just miss it. My stomach hurts and move on.
And you're eating different things. You're eating out. You're eating somebody else has this, that. And you're like,
If you just don't.
It's really hard to attribute overall generalized like the and bad health to something very specific, because it's all food journal, and then you chart it and you how you feel every day, what you ate, and then you think you're like, okay,
every time I eat that thing, I feel terrible.
I felt bad this day, so you look back a day, 2 days, and you look for similarities over time, and then you start to group them and correlate, and you're like,
I think it's important.
But we have figured out what we think is a significant clue into health. So we thought we would share this.
Yeah. And those are just ours.
Those are just ours. Yours may be different. They may be the same.
But I'm a huge proponent of figuring out what causes whatever your discomfort is.
The other thing that we wrote about, which is a side note, we did a video and a Substack write-up on H. pylori.
Oh, yeah.
Which is digestional problem thing, joint stiffness, headaches.
All sorts of crazy
and not
issues.
Absorbing minerals, being thirsty all the time. They don't, if you look up H. pylori, it doesn't say all these things. It doesn't say your joints will hurt. It doesn't say that you have unquenchable thirst and this and that. We have exactly those symptoms. They come back. If it comes back, knock it down. They go away. All of a sudden, everything's wonderful again. We did a whole video on those. If you have unsolvable health problems that doctors can't seem to figure out, and WebMD and Cleveland Clinic and all the other top Google answers,
tells you you're either fine or you're going to die.
And this doesn't cause that. This only causes these certain things, and it only causes stomach ulcers, and cancers and things and stuff, and all these other problems.
It's all very complicated.
So check that out if you are suffering those things.
Yep.
Well, thanks for watching. I hope this is of value to you. If it is, let us know in the comments. Hope to see you for the next one.